morning to our listeners, wherever you are. First of all, if you're in the cool city state of Enugu, we want to say good morning to you. And if you are in the southeast of Nigeria, it's some good morning to you. And if you are in the south or in the north central, or you are watching us online, a beautiful Saturday morning to all of you. And welcome to Freedom Square Live on Solid 100.9 FM. Of course, we're listening from 10B Service Crescent, GRA here in Enugu, the cool city state, southeast Nigeria. Of course, it's been 26 months and 4 days since the current PDP administration took the reins of government in Enugu State under the leadership of His Excellency, Dr. Barrister Peter Mbah. What has been achieved? What are the concerns? What lies ahead? On assumption of office, the governor made a bold proclamation: disruptive innovation. He had a bold manifesto that touched virtually on all aspects of life, from education to security to water, to youth empowerment, to tourism and hospitality, to agriculture and agro-industrialization. And we are concerned that in 6 months and 4 days, what has happened? What are the promises made? What are the promises kept? Are there rooms for improvement? And joining us this morning to dissect or have a periscopic view or a panoramic view of what has happened in the past 2 years accounting. He is a former secretary of the PDP in Enugu State, former special advisor to the governor on information. Currently, the state deputy chairman of the PDP in Enugu State. And he has another onerous responsibility of being the chairman of the Southeast Disciplinary Committee of the PDP. What a loaded titles. He is Barrister Steve Oruruo. Barrister, good morning and welcome to Freedom Square Live.
A very good morning to you. Good morning to the audience.
Okay, you are not a stranger. You've been a participant. You've been not just a participant, you've been a major stakeholder in the affairs of the PDP in Enugu State, and by implication, the Enugu State governance architecture. You have bestrode the political landscape like a colossus all these years. And so, my question is, can you give our listeners and viewers a best eye view of the assessment, your assessment overall of the PDP-led government in the past 26 months and 4 days?
Thank you very much. I'm one of the proponents, one of the apostles of the fact that the post-colonial Nigeria, has really been battered and has struggled to stay, in a fruitless pursuit of nationhood. Actually, we have had decades and, barrage of misrule, hiding under the auspices of neocolonialism. As a matter of fact, the leaders actually that have devotedly worked hard to install and establish qualitative leadership in this country will be crying whenever they are in their graves. Thinking about the likes of Nnamdi Azikiwe, Awolowo, Madibelo, and co. Well, suddenly, there's always a way out by the grace of God. Once in a while, we have leaders with conscience, leaders with passion. As people view this country as a country suddenly nosediving, but luckily there seems to be a glimmer of hope. There seems to be a glimpse of an easement of some sort that is so particularly in the Enugu State. The current administration appears to be in complete departure, from dysfunctional pedestrian or disconnected leadership The leadership has invested so much time in reconnecting the yearnings, the ideals of leadership, and the cravings of ordinary people. As a matter of fact, the facts are very clear. First of all, we need to celebrate that today we have a passionate leadership that wants to instill discipline, instill leadership models in tandem with the expectations of the masses. Don't forget that only in 2023, the masses deliberately worked so hard to show signs that do not like the Missouri that have enveloped the nation from the national to subnational level. They wanted to make a bold statement, and they did make that bold statement. So anybody who wants to govern today must rise to that expectation that the masses are keenly watching, and they want standardized leadership. And not a country where the leaders rush to Europe and America in search of care, either for hospital tourism or health tourism, or for leisure, or to send their children abroad for studies as well. But if you keep your own country in good tidings, in terms of infrastructural development, in terms of institutional or sectorial improvements, people will have no choice but to stay home here and begin to believe in their country. So there seems to be a yawning gulf. There seems to be, a yawning disconnect in terms of trust deficit between the masses, the governed, and, of course, the government. The leaders are the led. But in Enugu today, that disequilibrium, that inequities, that inequalities are being systematically, strategically, and calmly dismantled by the leadership through flurry of, interventions. And God forbid that we celebrate and pour encomiums or plaudits on government simply because we have hired them to come and do the job, or people in government because we have hired them. They asked for these votes and we voted for them. Having voted for them, they have surrendered whatever thing they have to work within the whims and caprices of the masses, knowing that the citizens are actually the owners of the government. And number one position in this life is not that of the president or the governor, it is that of the citizenry. And for that reason, you must recourse to the ideals and expectations of the masses and return faith. And that's the citizens' charter, which is leading in the frontiers of expectations as far as Enugu is concerned. So very quickly, let me just try to, attempt to capture, the interventions made by the state government today. While I have also said very clearly, I'm not in the vanguard of projecting or, patronizing leaders with encomiums or plaudits simply because they've been asked to govern or they've asked us to vote for them. But then if you take leadership to a very high level, if you take it to a level where we can trust you and begin to have a connect between the people and the leadership, then we have no choice than to celebrate you. We have watched the anguish. We have really watched, particularly the ordinary people, the poorer majority, have watched the anguish as democracy got decimated over the years. We have seen leaders not recourse to sensibility and temperament of the ordinary people. And there seems to be a struggle between, the wishes of the plebeians, the serfs, the ordinary people, and the overlords, the paymasters, and those who are on top of the food chain. So this yawning gap, this gulf must be bridged. In any way, as simply to put it in a very mild way, the leadership of the state has deliberately overturned the system, which they branded disruptive innovation, trying to bring a new order, a new system that will encapsulate the yearnings and expectations of greater majority and the poorer majority. That's the poorer majority. Having said so, what did the government do first of all? They defined the ideals of politics, the expectations of politics, review the meaning of politics and politicians and what we would expect politicians to do. Ordinarily, politicians, we are viewed here as an idle, parasitic, and rent-collecting class whose job is simply to, squander the available resources for the masses. But today, through tailored interventions, through careful and smart interventions by the government, there's a rising crescendo in terms of belief as to the possibility that government can truly serve the masses. So, immediately on arrival, the leadership of today, heavily anchored by Dr. Barrister, Peter Mbah, let's go to windows through which you can view the blistering performances, the exciting performances, the quality of governance that appears to be scintillating today on the prowl in Enugu. Let's go to education, for instance. And the governor talked about bringing 260 smart green schools. And we thought it was a joke. But today, these smart schools are rising up in their numbers. We expect that by September, over 60% of those schools should have been ready. And why do we have smart green schools? This is without prejudice to the fact that through NSUPEL and through PPSMB, necessary interventions, coordinations, and logistics were also being provided very intentionally by the government to make sure that the school system still functions very well. But that's something the governor is searching for. He's looking for experiential learning to be domiciled in our environment, where through these smart green schools, children of 3 years will be captured from creche to primary school to JS3. Meaning that in these schools, there will be buses, free buses for the students, free meal for the students, no school fees to start with. And in this school, within the context of this education system, we expect that artificial intelligence will be learned. There will be, of course, robotics, mechatronics, visual and augmented realities, and of course, ICT skills, science and technology, and other means of education are very much available for the kids. So with this level of quality education that we encapsulate, electronic boards and other facilities for the children, there seems to be a sense in which there will be equalization between the Western education that we find, of course, in Europe and America, and what the child gets here. That is the target. We want a situation where not only through theory, but through practical, our children will learn and will be able to be working in UK, working in America, working in Asia, staying in Nigeria. So that's a dream. He wants to create a kind of mental emancipation through skills for the young people. So that's the target. And if you also look at the cost of private schools in this state particularly, if not in Nigeria as a whole, it has become a system where people feel if you don't put your child in a school where you pay millions of naira, then you are not a big guy. You're not a big man in the society. But this school offers the best. And this best will be available for the rich and the poor. So there's a sense in which I feel that gap is being bridged. We live in a society where extremities of wealth and extremities of poverty live side by side. And that's very dangerous. So this is what the school has come to do in the main. So if it begins as expected, just like we flagged up by the president on the 4th of January, using the one in GTC and of course the one in Oruruo as well, you will see that there's a hope within the education sector. But as if this is not even enough, if we also look at what is being done at the university level, I was privileged to be with the governor when he was visiting the suite, and he clearly gave that instruction that he wants experiential learning. He doesn't just want classroom teaching. He wants a situation where students will be learning theoretical and also practical, so that they can be in shape. Things have become so difficult now that we need creativity. We need imagination. We need a situation where people can be creative in terms of ability to churn out something out of nothing. And that's what experiential learning provides for you. If you look at also ASUIT and IMT, for instance, under the watch of Professor Chigozo Bodo as a rector, you see that most of the courses have gotten a kind of accommodation, given that the government has provided everything necessary for this school to function optimally. So this is what we're talking about, just within the education sector. And very quickly, for want of time, let's
finish with the education sector so that we'll have an all-round conversation around it. Yes, as robust as that has been, are there any challenges that have been noticed within the implementation of these 260 smart schools? Are there any challenges and are there room for improvement?
Well, first of all, we expect to have about 6,500 classrooms. And this 6,500 classrooms has to do with about 260, smart schools. And if you look at there's no smart school that will cost anything less than 1 billion. I think you can't talk about 1.2 billion or so, or 1 billion naira to get a smart school completed in terms of building and equipping the schools, no matter how tight you try to make it happen. So I think paucity of fund has also been a serious problem. Despite the issue of paucity of fund, which is a general problem in the country, I think the leader of the state today is emotionally attached to these schools. He wants the school started. So the state is punching, using every power within its means to make sure that these schools, of course, are financed. And I also want to remind you that I listened to President Ruto of Kenya very diligently speak in London, with Prime Minister of London, of England, and under presidents too. Discussing about the importance of education and how much we should invest in education. And let me tell you for free that they only ask for 15 to 20% of the budget. But in Enugu here, the government has invested 33.2% of our budget. And I think our budget is about, 971 billion or so, with about 320 billion over that invested only in education. So, as of today, Enugu stands in prime position as far as Africa is concerned in terms of investment in education using the perimeter of the budgeting. No other state, no other country or subnational in Africa can boast of that percentage.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. My question will have to do again with, we noticed just a few very minute demolitions that have been done about this smart school. The government felt that some contractors were cutting corners and were not doing the kind of job they were asked to do. And that brought about 1 or 2 being brought down. How soon will those people level up? Because if perhaps the schools are starting in September, 1 or 2 are down, that means that's minus 1 or 2. What government doing to their best of knowledge about these other ones and the contractors in particular? Yes. When the shady job is done, those contractors have they been called out? Are they going to be punished? Or are they going to just speak briefly about it?
No, from the last couple of years, we have tried to do a systematic way of dealing with this contractual, terms. The contractors were made to sign the agreement. Whatever thing they have chosen to do, they went into it on their own volition. It is also foreseeable that there could be errors. It's foreseeable that there could be a few persons that may want to bring in, a subterranean or clandestine attempt at shortchanging the state and our people. But I remember very clearly that we had series of meetings upon meetings between the government, interface between the government and the contractors. We are under the leadership of the Secretary of the State Government. A lot of education was brought in terms of trying to tell them the import of the job they've come to do, not just in terms of contract, but in terms of the value. These contractors were called partners, not contractors, given the fact that they were trained to understand that you do not know whether your child, whether your relative at one point or the other, or your niece or nephew will end up being in these schools. So we wanted a situation where the contractors will develop a mindset of ownership in the process. A sense of entitlement and ownership that will give them that authority to function as if they are building this particular, edifices for themselves and not for the government. So out of 260 smart schools, and we have fragment of problems in 3. It is not a bad, it doesn't sound a bit absurd. It doesn't sound like an aberration to me. And if you also look at those ones where faults were spotted, the government actually did spot these faults. And we are talking about a section of the structures. These are structures that have at least 6 buildings or 7 per project. And a part of one would have been discovered to be a bit faulty. Instead of managing it, it is the will of the government to bring it down and make sure that whoever is responsible for that mistake, either technically or otherwise, should pay for it.
Okay, you wanted to talk about health.
Yes, another exciting place to look at is also health. Because without good health, only go to school if you're alive, as a matter of fact. And it is in this order that I think the government has prioritized the issue of health at the moment. If you look at why we talk about different political wards, and we have 260 political wards, and the government wants this quality of education to be replicated there. They also want 260 type 2 health centers to be in every political ward. Meaning that in every ward, it's either you find one or two communities or you find a particular community. So they want quality hospitals closest to people. Remember that we have had, health centers before. But the difference here is that the health center, the type 2 health centers we have, first of all, it has residential quarters, which has been the missing link between qualitative service in the past. Most of the doctors and nurses come from the different places to stay in these quarters. But this one is compulsory. There must be a residential quarters. And aside from that, the European Union, is in partnership with the government of Enugu, is providing solar. And there's also provision of clean water. And the government is deliberately furnishing this one from start to completion in terms of equipment, amount of equipment there. I've seen 1 or 2, 3 myself, well furnished already. So what does it want to provide? It wants to bring health services, healthcare closer to the doorsteps of our people. And then the government is also doing type 3. We have about 7 type 3 already completed as we're speaking today. But I think this, of course, may not be enough. If you go to Presidential Road or Rangers Avenue, if you may, or even on Barr Square, from those vantage positions, you could see, of course, a 300-bed international standard hospital being deliberately executed by this regime with an intent to find a blockade to unnecessary foreign health trips. If those, of course, those equipments or intellectual property that people are pursuing in the West, who implicated here or brought to the doorsteps of our people here, there'll be no point anybody to travel. Does it not appear to be, a negative sign for the president of a country to actually dine under in search of medical tourism? But I remember that the leader of Saudi Arabia once or many times visited Nigeria in search of medical health, coming to University of Ibadan Teaching Hospital. So, with many other names we cannot even mention here.
That would mean it's just an aberration. If a president travels out, because at that time, King of Saudi came out, they got it right.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So the vision is that we have to get it right now. So the Enugu government wants to provide opportunities for other subnationals, for citizens of this country to come to Enugu, for instance. I was privileged to have a friend of mine who also served in this government, travel to Dubai for, to run a heart operation by the American hospital in Dubai. So if you can bring in the intellectual property from there with the professionals available here, and you have all the necessary equipment, most of the finest doctors and Nigerian doctors abroad. So the exodus has to stop. If you give them right pay with the available equipment for them to perform, they will be here.
And a secure environment.
So at a secure environment. So having said this, these are intentional things just within 2 years that this governor is doing within the health sector. So does it not sound very alluring?
It's alluring if only you were going to address 1 or 2 things. And that's the thing that people keep asking. Perhaps maybe you are in a better position to address that. It touches education, it touches health. While the smart green schools are very laudable, and then of course the type 2 and type 3 hospitals are on, people ask, what's happened to the existing ones?
Very good. We have, of course, take for instance, the Parkland Hospital has been abandoned by any means. You have other general. I was actually born in the general hospital myself. So there's a sense if I feel emotional about these hospitals. Okay, I was born in General Hospital, Abane, meaning that anytime I pass that, I move across Abane and look at that hospital.
It gave you life.
Of course. So the government is also deliberate about making sure that the services are being provided. Whatever I'm talking about here, additional things being done by the government to ensure that we take it to the highest possible level that we can find within the context of what we have here. So that is what it is.
Okay, let's look at infrastructure. Let's look at roads. And let's look at roads first. If you are a visitor to Enugu, even if you're a little bit blind, you might know when there's a gallop or when there's a pothole on the road you're applying, and when there's not. So, Aurora, how far has this government gone to ensure that our road, in fact, part of the governor's promise or campaign promise was to ensure that Enugu becomes a destination of sorts. And one thing that will attract people first is as you enter from Abakaliki, as you enter from Onitsha, as you enter from the Gariki side, you are welcomed by fine motorable roads. If you enter into any of them and you find potholes, or my friend call it well holes, you first will be disappointed. So what has this government, or what is it still doing in the road ecosystem?
Well, I wish I had started with the road system.
Oh, you remember?
To be. In fact,
you want to start with everything.
We have lost count in that area. You know, the transportation system, like I always say, provides a kind of wisdom, a kind of window, a kind of easement through which a state will be clearly viewed. So if you want to get a state right, you need to also do work, very religiously concerning projects like road, for instance, means or other means of transportation. So there has been a concerted effort between the hierarchy of the government and the Ministry of Works, of course, other agencies of government to ensure that we get the best. And having said this, I think I was privileged to have seen a bit of the planning from the onset. We have the trunk A roads, the trunk B roads, the trunk C roads. Trunk A roads comprise major roads. Trunk B roads are also connecting roads like Emeke Bila, for instance, are connecting to Abane Road, connects, the likes of Ozala Street, the likes of Mount, and down to even one day. You understand? If you get those areas right, using that as an example, you find that you have reduced traffic in Abane Road. So there are also from B roads like that will give you a chance to also make life easy for our people. The trunk C roads, of course, you find like the streets, So the government has been deliberate about pounding everywhere in terms of trying to create this route. Let me give you an example. Since the inception of this government, about 133 roads have been commissioned, and about 300 roads have been flagged off now. From one street to the next street, even just within the new layout, for instance, if you go to Ababa, Emene, everywhere, you find out that these roads are being constructed from Nise to the likes of Robinson to Kenyatta, Bishop Anioke and co. We have seen massive development here and there. And there are major roads. So for instance, if you move from, let's say, Amechi Dodo, Obahuaman Kano, Isuzo, to that's Udenu local government, double lane. Now, if you view that as we're going to Abakaliki, for instance, to your left, you find the road I'm talking about. There's also a road that will move about 4 local governments to connect Amagunze from Enugu East to Enugu South, down to Ukano West. Several roads like that in terms of roads that can connect to different local governments. But within the metropolis, we have seen flurry of roads
the streets being tired on daily basis. Why is the government doing that? And where are they getting the monies to do that? There appears to be a puzzle of some sort. But the answer is also very there. It's also very clear. When you look at, for instance, the fact that the Enugu government appears to be the first government, if I'm not mistaken, to have built an asphalt plant, one of the biggest asphalt plants in the country, which is supposed to be a feeder to these roads. So that reduces the cost of building roads and expertise that the PDI, for instance, has brought into bear. Contractors also involved in the process. But beginning to see, plenitude of roads being constructed here and there. And this is just within the first 2 years. You can imagine what will happen with that asphalt plant supplying the asphalt for the next 8 years. So the vision is that everywhere will be tarred. Because as you make your bed, so you lie on it, it mangles all of this, defines all credulity, and builds all imagination that Africans will deliberately go to the West. Like in UK, Germany, other places where you hardly see even ordinary soil. You go there to enjoy yourself and catch your cruise, but you come back here to watch your people suffer as a way of life. You say it's a Nigerian system. That's nothing like a Nigerian system. This is ineptitude being foisted on the people by some leaders. Today there seems to be a departure, and that's what we're having in Enugu today.
Okay. In the past, one of the challenges that people have had, I recall personally, it is a personal experience.
Without cutting your short, this is without prejudice to double lane that also go from Penox to Soka, to Pure Sokaro, to Pure Soka.
And what's happening around
Despite what had been done before. But the government feels he needs to put a straight road down and also introduce some measures of security with the roads, which everybody will see in the fullness of time.
Yes, I recall vividly a couple of years ago when I was about entering into a partnership with a foreign company on setting up an electronic media in Enugu. They actually came down to Enugu. I discussed with them. They went back to Abuja. And we were advised by their embassy that for security reasons they should not go to Enugu State then. It's not now, but I was not governor then. And so I lost that opportunity. It was a real opportunity. And so that brings me to security and public safety. How far has the state responded to the concerns in the past 2 years? What has government done to ameliorate the issue of insecurity within the state?
Well, I think the issue of security, it must be well established. It must be well underscored here that security is a mutating challenge all over the world. Security is an evolving, challenge all over the world. You may call it insecurity as well. But the one thing is very clear, that as much as every government tries to work hard, the intent is to also curb the excesses of this insecurity and possibly bring it to a zero level, which appears to be an illusion in my eyes. It is highly difficult for any government, be that in America. I'm always watching international stations, and what I see is from one crime to the next. So it appears almost only but a dream to have a 100% sanitized society without crime. Having established this, it behooves on the government to put extra measures to do their best to ensure that security is brought to the people so that they can come out and fight for it. Like I used to say, and the Igbo are egalitarian, the Igbo are capitalist, the Igbo are industrious, the Igbo are the most hardworking tribe you can find anywhere in the world. If there's any country where you won't find an Igbo man, then there's a problem in that place. Even if you like, let it be Yemen. Even if you like, let it be South Sudan. Having said this, the governor and government of Enugu came in at a time where they could have excused themselves not to come in terms of security situation in the state. It was a time where people were coming into the city, kidnapping people, cutting away property. Non-state actors have been running the Southeast Vanguard in terms of occupation of the space. And there was a sense in which government acquiesced to the presence of these non-state actors. Nobody had the audacity to call their bluff. But a certain Governor Peter Mbah came and said, enough. And if you also consider what happened just between the 9th of August to 9th of August 2021 to 19th of December 2022, the data showed very clearly that Indigo lost over 5.3 trillion naira with the excesses of sit at home. And between the number of days I called for you, we lost 71 days sitting at home. 71 days. Out of possible, let's say 370 something days, we lost 71 days sitting at home. For a tribe that survived the Civil War having only 20 pounds. The greatest achievement of an Igbo man is ability to wriggle out of many problems, to improvise, to be intuitive, and create out of nothing a means of survival. That means of succor, that means of survival was truncated, it was vitiated, it was completely knocked off by a certain group of persons that feigned to be protecting you while destroying you. But the governor of Enugu came and said, enough, we have had enough. And within this context now, small-scale industries, micro businesses actually lost over 4-point-something trillion naira within this annually, in the course of this struggle. That's what the data shows. So having said this now, it was enough impetus, it was enough spur, it was enough motivation on the side of the government to say enough. If you want to build a society where people can invest, where there will be foreign investors and local investors, you must sanitize that city and allow people to do businesses without interferences. And that was the beginning of the dismantling of the sit-at-home order. Reckless orders with incendiary statements, inflammatory statements are cut off by any government, giving other states the ideal confidence and sense of authority to follow suit. So having said that, that was the beginning of the end of sit-at-home. And you cannot just stop sit-at-home with declarations. There must be actions that will follow that up. So the government acquired 300 vehicles, sophisticated vehicles, AI-embedded vehicles with the ability to track criminals and also show faces of drivers and plate numbers. Mounted cameras everywhere at very huge cost. And this is that without prejudice to the fact that there's a control and command center in Government House, which the president himself also commissioned on the 4th of January this year. Meaning that if from that vantage position, you can view Enugu no matter wherever you are. But given the circumstances, it's not a perfect scenario at the moment. But at least it gives us opportunity to track. So I know that even the challenge has been stopped in Anambra, courtesy of what that command and control center provides. So this is the quality of presentation in terms of defending Enugu as the impregnable fortress of the Igbo man. If Enugu will fall, it shouldn't be Enugu. It is almost the last day standing for the Igbo man that shouldn't be touched by anything. So this governor has come knowing the import of the place of Enugu, because the historical standard and quality of Enugu and how much Enugu should be defended. He has stood like the rock of Gibraltar, making sure that that has been presented. And for Enugu to progress economically, because there seems to be a sense in which I feel there is a rebirth going on. There's a release that's going on. The performance is reminiscent of what Okpara and Zik did before the Civil War, where the Southeast was touted to be the fastest growing region in the entire world. And for all these moribund companies that we're going to talk about to come alive again, you need to also provide security. There must be semblance of orderliness for these things to work. So that this government has provided stoutly and fearlessly too. So one must commend the sense of bravery that also motivates actions and inactions of the government.
Okay, let us take a look at tourism and hospitality industry. One of the things, again, I was at the manifesto unveiling at the Godfrey University when the governor, then he was candidate of PDP, when he unveiled his manifesto. And I heard him talk about tourism very well. He mentioned a lot of things about tourism and hospitality. And looking back 26 months and 4 days now, do you feel that at least half of those promises have been kept?
I think without any sense of unnecessary excitement, without any sense of playing to the gallery, I think this governor has surpassed expectations, to be honest. When I was talking about insecurity, I didn't talk about the DRS. The creation and training of the DRS special, team has also cushioned the effect of insecurity in the state. So very quickly, if you talk about viewing the state from the angle of hospitality, from the angle of tourism, and every other opportunity, you can only visit states where there is security, where there are options as to what are investment opportunities. There must be something for you to come and see. Let's just look at Oruruo going on at the moment. For every roundabout, for every square in Enugu today, something is going on. This is a government that is not just working, but seems to have been working. And again, certain indices or indicators. Take, for instance, we have watched in anguish as presidential hotel stood, and in fact stood in ruins. It was a monumental embarrassment to the entirety of Igbo man, not just to the Enugu State as a whole. To everyone's surprise, too, for 25 years, nobody questioned. Even if efforts were being made, the masses did not notice that effort because it didn't yield result. But for all the legal encumbrances, all the impediments holding down presidential hotel, this government strategically, skillfully dismantled all of them. And today, the presidential hotel is bouncing back and standing elegantly to the chagrin of even naysayers. It is a monument that no fairy tale can distort. In the same vein, as if it's not even enough, let's go to the conference center that was started by Governor Peter Mbah during his time. And for almost 25 years again, it was lying in ruins. It was lying in comatose. And suddenly, under 2 years of this regime, whatever held it down, whatever spiritual or physical that tied it to the ground, was of course removed by this government. And today, the National Conference Center is standing elegantly and attracting all manner of visitors and, bringing wealth on the table of the government. And when they say they are going to move, when this government promised to move Enugu State from, $4 billion economy to $30 billion, some of us were a bit skeptical. But when we started seeing certain things, including the arrival of the conference center and the kind of monies coming into the conference center, and the need also protected as a legacy, the hope, became alive. So the conference center is there. In Nigeria, a body as prestigious as the Nigerian Bar Association, when they opted out of Port Harcourt, the River State, the option was very easy. They chose Enugu here. Not first. If several other bodies had cost to use this conference center as their launching pad. So everybody is looking interested in coming to Enugu. And as they come to Enugu, they are condemned to be in hotels. They are condemned to spend money. They are condemned to invest in one way or the other. Not only that, the government takes the glory on the people of Enugu, taking the advantage of that scenario. It presents Enugu better within the Committee of States. So having said this, it's to be very interesting to also note that within this contest, the government found it necessary to also build another gigantic international hotel, the Conference Center Hotel by the side of that conference center. A hotel that will have about 335 rooms, out of which about 224 will be single rooms and about 64, of course, will be business seats, and about 25 again with diplomatic seats, with about 2 presidential wings. That's the quality of the hotel, not for an individual, but for the state. Who told you that government cannot be in business? If you have shrewd, very organized, pragmatic leaders, they can introduce businesses and those businesses will stand. So this was germinating there, in case you don't know. By the time you look, you adjacent to that very conference center, you find what I'm talking about. It is standing there and it is looking to all of us that it is possible within our time that someone can lift government beyond pedestrian, dysfunctional, and profligate level to another high degree of governance that people can begin to trust.
Okay.
This is not enough. This is not enough. If you're talking about investment and, attractions that anyone can bring, let it be known to the world that as we are speaking here today, United Palm Products Limited has been wired to come alive. There's this.
I was actually coming to agriculture and agro-industrialization because it was also a major plank.
No, but this can be connected to what I'm saying too.
Yeah, you can take them.
Yes, because the government invested about 100 billion naira in the PPP for the United Palm Produce Limited, meaning that it has come alive. There's a sense in which I've looked at the investment made by Okpara, like I said, all manner of industries that we have had in the past within the context of the Eastern Nigeria as a whole, including even Calabar, Port Harcourt, and everywhere, conducted from the same line building by these men, or these noble men, that if you look out for their investments, you'll find none. They worked freely for the society. They gave everything that they had. They are standing as a standard bearer of what leadership should be. So no wonder probably that Mbah is also sitting there as a governor and feeling the heat, and is trying to do everything to replicate the standards set by this man. So having talked about the UPPL, let's quickly go to Anioke, for instance. Anioke has been seriously improved by the government to come to the old self or even better the standard where it was. Having said that, look at also the Niger gas. The government is investing heavily in Niger gas to restore orderliness and productivity. As if it's not even enough. Look at the Sunrise Flour Mill a minute. The government is also investing heavily there to ensure that these companies come alive again under the watch of a very active governor who is desirous of building Enugu back to where I should be. And as if that's not even enough, if you go to it, of course, the aluminum company is also standing firm, elegantly, whooping at everyone. So anybody who cares to listen and who is interested also seeing and partnering with the state will see very clearly that that place has also been open for business. So other companies and industries also germinate here and there, also of the deliberate effort of the government to restore hope and restore, prosperity within the rank and file of the state.
Okay, I wanted to get back to agriculture. Part of what the governor talked about, which had to do with security, was his attempt, as it were, to use agriculture, food security, to fight insecurity. I was privileged to have visited just one. Maybe if there are others, you help us with that. I was at Akmof with some people. It was an area that was ungoverned for a pretty long time. And suddenly the governor felt that that was enough, that area has to be made useful. So I visited Akmof. And in terms of agriculture and agro-industrialization, it was one aspect of his campaign promises. And I do not know, beyond the one I've seen, I do not know whether there are other areas that you want to talk about in agriculture and food security.
Well, in agriculture, you could see that the government is doing everything very possible to revamp the agricultural sector, given the import of agriculture. Under the last regime, ended by President Buhari, it was almost like a mantra for everybody to go home and get involved in agriculture. But you cannot cultivate anything when Marudin gun-toting, fearless, monstrous, killers take over your environment and your bushes, who will go to the farm? So that was why it became very imperative that the government had to flush off all non-state actors and those who were masquerading as your saviors for killing you in your numbers and decimating and killing your professors and killing your best and business moguls, innocent people in different places, even children were not spared. Having said this, you gave a very good example, like a buff that used to be almost a fortress for some people acting undercover but killing our people. Suddenly, that place has been turned into an agricultural Eldorado of some sort. So the process in this regime now is, first of all, get involved and make sure that everything in terms of collaboration with international bodies must be done very clearly. So the government has invested heavily into the deals or dealings with international bodies, through World Health, through major organizations, so that funds leading to assessing products and programs from IFAD, for instance, LPRES and appeals have been achieved under this regime. And the government has set out 300,000 hectares of land. So just to go into cassava to ethanol productivity for exportation, which is going on at the moment. As if this, was not enough, about 200 hectares have been earmarked the political word for farming, for that's mechanized farming. It is being reserved as a kind of land bank through which, interested farmers, not subsistent farmers, but major investors can also invest properly. Our people are being encouraged heavily to go into mechanized farming, that's the order of the day. If you look at Israel, for instance, you find out they don't have the land, they can't boast about the geographical land or anything, but they have the intellectual property to go into mechanized agriculture. So that intellectual property we are trying to introduce here. The government is being very intentional about bringing such ideas through a lot of investments to ensure that that's exactly why this government has invested about 4.6 billion naira in terms of aid within agriculture through seedlings and funds and other things, so that even the poorer farmers can also get involved in this business. And we have a very vibrant commissioner for agriculture who is full of ideas too. I wish you also give me a chance to be here to talk to you.
I guess
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. While he was there, he talked about 67,000 farmers being registered across 17 local government areas. So he talked about areas like Enugu North, Enugu South, that couldn't easily provide the 200 hectares. They're doing green, what they call greenhouses, which they actually showed us some greenhouses. They say it's already somewhere in Eva Valley, and then Making Hill area, they're already doing that. Okay, if you quickly talk about youth and job creation, because if you say all these, and we don't get close to people who are graduating, how are all these that the government is doing, how is it impacting the youth and providing employment, creating wealth? That is, I've had recent occasions to have a glimpse of what's happening at the SME Center being run by Cyril. So how has all this you've said now been able to do?
Of course, the very last example I offered you is, to be clinical enough as an eye opener. When about 4.6 billion invested already, with the purpose of just deliberately giving out money to people for investments. And most people collecting these monies, of course, are youths. And having said that, all manner of things we are discussing here, including the contracts from education and all, still go to very younger people getting involved at one level of involvement, one level of work or the other. You understand? Having said that, look at, for instance, the transportation sector. If I talk about the smart schools, remember the experiential center, the training center has about 15,000 persons being trained at the moment, with 11,000 to go to the smart green schools. These 11,000 people are talking about youths. And if you look at, for instance, Enugu Air, for instance, the glamorous Enugu Air, first of its kind, since the inception, since the creation of states in the eastern Nigeria, no eastern state has ever owned a plane. Enugu is the first in that order. I'm not talking about the old Anambra state. Old eastern Nigeria till today. Enugu is the first. And there are a flurry of persons, there are a good number of persons that have come for training for these flights. And as of last time I checked, we have hired over 500 persons involved in this business, and even more going on. And if you also speak with the Commissioner for Transport, for instance, it is ennobling to note that the vehicles that are bringing, because it's good to talk about the transportation sector now, the vehicles that are bringing in now at Obaspia, engine buses, Pangle, some drivers have been hired. With some other workers within that, ecosystem. You find out that a good number of youths will also be involved at one level or the other, either at the management level, at driving level, or conducting the affairs of the buses. And they're also expecting, from what I know, about 3,000 cabs will be available. 3,000 cabs will be unleashed on the city. These 3,000 cabs will be managed by certain persons and also driven by human beings, talking about the youths. And if you look at Oruruo Jetty, for instance, and also one, many people fail to understand the fact that that place has been opened as a waterway, means of transportation as well. And as a naval base, through the collaboration with the Nigerian Navy, they've established a kind of naval base there to make sure that we have security within the place we have the jetty. It was done by the state government, and because it's done in the Enugu metropolis, nobody's talking about it. So, and people have been, called to stay there and, of course, work. So these are job opportunities being created from one place to another.
Welcome back to the show. You are still listening and watching Freedom Square Live on Solid 100.9 FM. And my guest is still Barrister Steve Oruruo, State Deputy Chairman of the PDP in Enugu State, and of course the Chairman, Southeast Disciplinary Committee of the same party, the PDP. We'll be speaking to the many disruptive innovations and achievements of the Governor of Enugu State in the past 26 months and 4 days. And we'll touch the area of health, we'll touch the area of education, we'll touch the area of security, youth and job creation, transportation, and road infrastructure, among others. And before we went on break, I kind of said, we're going to look at two areas that this listeners will not forgive me if I fail to ask questions on one, the issue of what they call multiple taxation. I've had the chairman of Federal Revenue State, where you're sitting now, a couple of weeks ago. So he spoke to that. He mentioned the category of taxes. People still believe there's a multiplicity of tax. And one man called me and said, my mom sells vegetable. She goes to the market, maybe he sells vegetable. He's expected to make 1,000 naira, and they collect 200,000 from him, 200 naira from him for selling 1,000 naira. The chairman was able to explain what they're doing, because personally, I feel a bit satisfied listening to him. But because each time there's a government person here, so to speak, I want to use some opportunity for him to talk more about it. Because in spite of the explanation, the citizens are not believing that. And then the other is the issue of water. They believe that promise is not being kept or is not being met. What are the challenges?
Okay, let's start with transaction actually. And thank God you had the presence of
Executive chairman.
Executive chairman who would have dispatched with
So he
anger.
did as much as he can, but I want you to support what he
He would
said.
have been more proficient in handling this matter than myself. But one thing is very clear. I live in Enugu. I am part of the system here. I've been around for some time and I feel the pain of everyone. And I should be in the vanguard of saying what the truth is. The truth is that there's nothing like special taxation going on. There has been this issue of laxity about taxation in the past, where people involved in government also sit back, sometimes collect some personal funds from people, put in their own private pockets and walk away. This is why in this regime, for instance, the internally generated revenue has moved up and lived up to 600% of what it used to be because of deliberate acts by the government. The government issued a kind of blockade against leakages and making sure not only that leakages have been blocked, but the private sector has been drawn into taxation at the lowest level. Growing up as a child, I knew when people begin to run in my village market as a suspicion of arrival of certain tax collectors. And suddenly it vanished because of profligacy, wastages, and pedestrian level of leadership in the past. People didn't have the courage, people in government, to even ask for taxation. Because if you have to pay tax, there should be something commensurate with that tax collected in terms of productivity that gives you the moral authority to demand for tax, apart from the legal authority to ask for it. So eventually, if a government is working at optimal level and delivering the goods and delivering the quality of governance, in line with the expectations of ordinary people, people will be galvanized enough to say, we have really to pay tax. People that go to foreign countries for one thing or the other, obey the law, do this, do that, all these monies actually come from taxation. So what this government has done is to draw every qualified person to pay the tax. So the minimal tax collected are also being put in use maximally and prudently for the benefit of the masses. This is what it is. We have gone away from that era of maybe non-payment of tax to the era where people are condemned to pay for tax. It appears to be new, but I think with the flurry of, dividends of democracy being pounded everywhere by this regime, as it progresses more, people won't have any reason to even complain about taxation because you see what that tax is going into. Having said that, so long as it is centralized, I also advocate at all times that taxes should be just one-off. It should be made to come through one source and you pay electronically to ensure that people don't defraud you in the process of taxation. So that my people will not suffer. So that duty to pay tax is a civic responsibility. It must be dispatched. Then conducting means of collection of tax must be done in a way where people will not be made to pay tax several times. So this is what I also advocate. So that's what it is.
And what?
Then on the issue of water, for instance, yes, indeed this government, water was almost central in the making of this leadership because of the constant rhetorics around it. The constant water became a mantra at some point. And I can tell you from my vantage position that the government of the state, anchored by the governor himself, has always been desirous of providing water. And that's the tax query. For instance, before the arrival of this government, Enugu was only getting 2 million liters of water. 2 million liters of water on a daily basis. But this government has contrived to move this thing to 120 million liters per day. Meaning that if you even want to split it, because of the water plant, the quality of water plant you have in 9 Mile now, and the 4 megawatts gas plant backing it up, that produces 70 million liters of water per day. And OG provides 50 million, making it 120 million liters of water per day. The problem now is in reticulation. And why is it the devil there? In the sense that, first, when the government tried to reticulate with the pace that it required, over 400 buildings were supposed to pull down in Enugu. And considering the difficulties in town, considering how we don't live in another state, we don't live in another continent, we don't live in another, we live on earth and we live in Nigeria. We know the pains of people. And there's no way government will elect to pull down 400 buildings in the name of putting water. So now, even the attempt to continue to force water in through some other channels has still been limited by the fact that some old asbestos used during the colonial days or so are now getting exploded because they can't withstand the pressure that the water, the volume of water produced down is bringing. So the government is deliberately channeling these things, taking time to also do it zone by zone. Because if you are hell-bent on making sure that water is everywhere under 6 months and pulling down every houses you see, are you going to govern animals or spirits? You're going to govern human beings. So pragmatically, judiciously, giving all facts on the table, everything is being done. And if you look at how blistering the quality of performances in every other sector, you know that this government is deliberate. This government is determined. This government is almost ruthless in terms of attacking projects. They attack projects with venom and they get their results.
Okay.
So this one will be dispatched.
Yes, our time is running. The 2 hours you think is endless, but it's actually running. Let's move away from governance. But before I do that, okay, this is linked to governance. Let's move to party. And the first response I got, I think I put it in quote here, but someone said, not everyone is clapping. There are a bit of concerns, from issues around transparency to allegations of elitist governance. Members of your party, some members of your party, who you call, or we call career politicians, believe that they're getting the short end of the stick. They believe they've done all the work. They spend their time. And when you look around, they find men with laptops everywhere in government. Only but a very few of them. One might say, do you know it's a difficult thing to call even a commissioner and they will not get a response. He doesn't know who is calling him. That's how pedestrian he has come. One might say, look, he just made a joke. He said, let's go even to the Ministry of Transportation, the PAMSEC, and he will answer you. He said, the people there don't answer anybody who call. They tell you, go and pick. So, I'm making it lighter. But you're a deputy chairman of the party. How far are members of the party carried along?
Well, even for governmental concerns, the party takes responsibility because this is a government of the party. The party is like the mother of the government. It's like the midwife. So we take direct responsibilities. We can't share responsibilities. We don't hide away from, the realities of time. So to answer your question now, the truth is this. We have to face facts. The fact is that if you look at the population of Enugu, I am sure it's not anything less than 4 million people. And out of the 4 million people, I am sure we can get that, you get at minimum, let's say about 1 million adults. These adults are interested in being part of governance. And if you leave your governance in the hands of ordinary people, even idiots will arise to govern you. Government should not be allowed in the hands of politicians alone. Government should be for the people. Government should be for intellectuals, technocrats, professionals, people like you.
I said there are no professionals in politics.
No, hold on. The point I'm making is that within the context of politics in itself, there are politicians that are also intellectuals in their own rights, in different fields and disciplines. Without that, who is even a politician, who is not? Most people are politicians. It depends on what you understand the meaning of a politician to be. And some people claim to be technocrats when they are politicians. If you are given a position in government, either appointed or elected, you have become a politician. By the simple general meaning of a politician. So, but what I'm trying to see in effect is that the window was open to accommodate more people. There shouldn't be limited people calling themselves politicians only for this business. It is for all of us in Enugu as a whole, and even those living here and those interested in being part of the government, depending on the value they will have to present on table. So then if you call it a government unusual, it is no longer pedestrian. It's a government that accommodates all shades of people, those who work very hard and those whose intellectual property appear to be indispensable in the business of the day. You cannot do without reckoning with them. So these people will also be involved in governance at one level or the other. So how many opportunities do you have in government in terms of portfolios? How many commissioners are you going to have in a state? How many local government chairmen do you have in a state? How many advisors are you going to have in a state? But the truth is that government should do things that eyes can see. Government should do things that should be trusted. Government should provide amenities, basic amenities. Government should, provide dividends of democracy that will outlive that particular government. And I told you about 2023 election. It's a serious source of concern. Ordinary people you never knew they would be interested in politics all came out to vote. They said they wanted something. They focused on what they wanted actually. And if you don't present to them those ideals, those quality leadership standards, they are going to vote you out. It's as simple as that. So the government should be very directly concerned about mitigating the suffering of people, trying to create palliatives for the people through direct and indirect approaches to governance, through physical and mental dividends of democracy. So there should be a deliberate effort on the side of the government to accommodate everybody, including the politicians. This is not to avoid that politicians, so-called, under this context, are not very important. But we should face the reality that some of us will be privileged to get an appointment. A decision must be taken in terms of pleasing people. And some people have to be just like when a match is on. Sometimes we don't play. We had an Oruruo on the bench when the female team won the African tournament. But after watching the first match, the coach saw that she was going to be better than Oruruo.
She was part of the team.
Yes, she was part of the team.
Yes,
he introduced from the bench, but she was not playing.
She was not playing.
So some of the people that don't even have appointments today are going to have the loftiest appointment in the second term. Even before the end of the first term, only a few weeks ago, if not last week, some changes were made. Some commissioners had to go. Some new persons came in. So these are the realities of time. The most important thing, there's no point playing around the bush.
Okay.
The most important thing here is that let this government deliver what is sustainable, deliver what can be seen, deliver projects that people can reckon with and say, this is what we have seen in this time. And no fairy tale can distort these facts.
Okay, before we open the top lines, let's get to party discipline. You are the chairman of the Southeast Disciplinary Committee. I don't know how many times your party has sat, whether there has been any issue of indiscipline. But we do know that, I don't know whether there was any attempt by anybody within the Enugu geopolitical climate to sabotage the last attempt to have a party secretary, national secretary in Enugu State. But beyond that, you might wish to touch it, but beyond that, the last question before we open the talk lines is a question that, if again, I don't ask you as the deputy chairman of the PDP in the state, I'll be doing my listeners a disfavor. I'll be hurting them. And that is the issue that is in every nook and cranny. It's a rumor. But of course, as a journalist, grapevine. Grapevine is what you call rumor. We call it grapevine. That grapevine says that there are an imminent explosion or implosion that talks that there are attempts by leadership of state to lead PDP. You are in a better position to explain this to those who are listening. What is the true picture?
Well, the true picture is that, as far as I know, and to the best of my knowledge, Enugu government is still a PDP-led government. That means that PDP is still holding sway in Enugu State. So anybody who is trying to plant any or concoct all manner of stories, it's the business of the person. But for me, this is still a PDP state. And the new governor is still a PDP governor. And having said this, It is not unknown to many that PDP somehow as a party has not been fair to these people of the Southeast. And this is not a platform to deceive people. If in 1999 that the people of the Southeast deliberately, consciously voted for President Olusegun Obasanjo, even when their own son had formulated the system, the zoning system that we use today, and everybody was rooting for Alex Ekwueme to be president. But for the sake of Nigerian cohesion, for the sake of our national unity, for the sake of our peace and social cohesion, Ndị Igbo dropped that agenda and vigorously supported Olusegun Obasanjo and emerged from the PDP. In an election that the Southwest didn't vote for him. And when he got to Yaradua, we gave resounding support from here. When Goodluck Jonathan came back to the South, Goodluck Jonathan had it. And it was a vociferous, resounding support again coming from the Southeast to Goodluck Jonathan. And Power went to the North for whatever reason in another party. Returning to the South, it was logical, it was commonsensical, it was highly expected that the parties should have also nominated Igbo candidates from the Southeast. But unfortunately, for their own selfish, clandestine reason, it was manipulated away from the Southeast. And if you expect people to be very happy, it's not fair. Having said that, remember that PDP had 5 states in the past. Suddenly they lost 4. And today they have 1. And if you have a zonal party, zonal caucus of the party, zonal executive of the party take a decision in line with instructions from the national body, and that decision is not being reckoned with, does it suggest a party that is taking cognizance of the powers, the efforts, the sacrifices of the Southeast? To me, it calls for worry. So, just like ordinary people are worried, we are so worried. But that doesn't mean we have also departed the party. But I tell you one thing, what gives me confidence is that party politics, or partisan politics as you may choose to call it, is only a conduit pipe through which aspirations of politicians are fulfilled. Aspirations of the populace and even the electorate could be fulfilled. So the parties, ideally in the Nigerian context, they do not have so much difference in terms of ideology, in terms of philosophy. Most of these parties try to copy what the PDP did in 1998 in terms of the constitution. So, but in reality, it becomes on the character who's on the saddle to demonstrate his willingness to govern effectively for the good of the poor majority, for the good of the Nigerian people, both the rich and the poor. So that's why I'm relaxed. The leader of the party in Enugu today has demonstrated strength of character, has demonstrated candor, has demonstrated sagacity, has demonstrated, fairness and sense of rectitude and probity in office than the people, the ordinary people want him, by all means. The masses are following him. So if he chooses to go to any party, they'll go with him. If he elects to stay with PDP, they will stay with him. So the most important thing is that the poster boy of the regime is the governor himself. The signage of all eyes is the governor himself. The man behind the wheel is the governor himself. If has demonstrated, he has applied himself in the office very well. It is for the good of the entirety of the followers of the party. So he has done the good job enough that the masses are convinced. He has made a bold statement. He has made imprint no fairy tale can distort. He has stamped his authority on the ground and left some monumental achievements and legacies that even our children and the grandchildren will get to know about. So on this basis now, if he elects to be anywhere, be sure that Enugu people will be with him. And when we talk about Enugu, we mean preponderance of all concerned persons in Enugu, including stakeholders, the electorates, voters, all the necessary persons will be with him. People are sick and tired of politicking and deceit in the name of politics. What they want to see is result. What they want to see is productivity. What they want to see is proficiency. What they want to see is qualitative governance. This is what they're begging for. They're tired of being deceived. That's why they look up to characters, people they can trust in terms of name capital. And I think the governor of Enugu has aimed that.
So, first person call from Nimbo, he talked about water and transaction. And I need to reiterate the fact, without mincing words, that this government set out, bought all necessary equipment for water, from 9th Mile to Oji River, now producing. And I want to say it very clearly, that what Enugu produced before the coming of this government was only 2 million liters of water in a day. But today they are producing 120 million liters of water in a day. And what Enugu needs in terms of water on daily basis, 70 million liters of water. So we are producing by far more than Enugu needs. The problem is with reticulation. And I've reiterated the fact that it will take breaking down over 400 buildings as they go for the water to come very easily as we want. Now, how do you improvise and get it done by other means? It's been done zone by zone now, and are working tenaciously and vigorously to make sure that the same result is achieved. And by the way, water is also coming in some places without doubt. And the people can attest to the truth. So that's settled. On taxation, I want to say that, if you keep doing the things you are doing the same way without making a change, you end up getting the same result. If you keep on working in a society where there will be no tax at all, we'll keep on getting, a very stereotyped government, so marooned or so steeped in ignorance and ineptitude, so indolent in terms of performance. But if you want result, and if you want vibrant, you want activity to be around government, especially when there's a governor, a leader who is pragmatic and willing to apply the people's money for them, then there's need for taxation. But I also agree that tax should be minimal. And what is the issue here is that people in the private sector, almost the tax is alien to them, given what had happened in the past, are being made to pay taxes. So it's unknown to them when you talk about tax. I'll give you a story about how much people ran away when I was very young. People were running from tax people. Anything, if you say tax people are coming, you start running. But today, people don't even remember that they pay taxes. This government has brought the issue of taxation back. The way you live abroad, you must pay a minimum tax that should be used maximally to produce to you or produce for you. So this is the essence. So the essence of taxation cannot be re-emphasized. Tax must be paid. We must develop that structural attitude to stand up to it, pay our taxes, live up to our civic responsibilities, but on the side of the government, make sure we streamline taxation to come only one source, so that there will be multiple taxation and people don't have to pay repeatedly. So that I've said. Then very quickly, Kichuku also called from Abu on the road and talked about water, and I don't need to to repeat what I've said again. The third person actually called. In fact, Obuefi also said that contractors should be watched, so that they won't shortchange the government, so that they won't do jobs that will be ineffective or engage in any measure that will sabotage the government in terms of poor performances. I agree with him totally. And that's why governments set up layers of checks, from the government house team led by the secretary to the state government, to the local government team led by the local government chairman, to even the traditional rulers and the councillors at the ward level. They are also part of this. This is without prejudice to a set of architects, engineers, and other supervisors whose job is only to look at the technical aspect of the job and see whether the quality expected is being also achieved. So having also talked about what Obuefi is concerned, the fourth person talked about the electricity in Enugu. Enugu, clearly, since electricity was dismantled from the EDC, the coupling of some sort of electricity from the federal government hands, let me put it that way, for lack of words. Enugu was the first to pass the bill, creating a body now to regulate electricity and make it cheaper. Only a few weeks ago, Enugu was also the first to reduce the cost of tariff for the band A, which generated a kind of controversy because the governor is sensitive and is keenly watching the sensibility and temperament of his people and trying to drive a cost that will mitigate their suffering.
The man from Obuaka said they don't have last for 1 year.
No other state has dealt with that. Now I'm talking about that. If you say you have not had any life for you,
where has he made his complaint?
I am from Kano land, and I'm from the neighboring local government, and I'm aware the council chairman of in Kano East local government is from Oboka. So questions should be raised. And I can assure you that the Oboka I know, they have lights. So if there is a particular problem in your own community or village, you should be able to also ask questions and come back from your Anambra, go to that place and know what the problem is. So we can tackle it in terms of exactitude. Having said that, I think Ago also spoke about the 60%, which is 600%, which is very important. I never said tax has been raised to 600%.
Yes.
I am saying the Enugu's internally generated revenue, due to the blockade now, due to the fact that leakages have been blocked, monies that should have gone to private coffers for people to go and enjoy, failing to be working for government, now goes to the government's own purse. To the extent that what have been gotten in the last regime, this regime has doubled, in fact, has redoubled up to 600%.
And it's 30 seconds addressing the 30 seconds.
And in the 30 seconds,
yeah, concluding remarks.
What I need to say here is that we thank God for what we are seeing today. It is the making of God Almighty that a certain governor like Peter Mbah can come in our own time to govern. A governor who is in a haste, not only to work, but also demonstrate that government can be trusted anymore, that government can be working. This is no longer a time where they talk about non-feasance. This is a time where people are discussing the quality of work. Work is going on. Enugu has become a theater of work. So what we need to do now is to support him, follow him, trust him, believe wherever he goes, whatever thing he does, does not matter. I want to repeat, the color of the flight going to Abuja. What matters is the quality of the pilot, the quality of the plane, the safety, and the confidence of the people put together. So this is why we trust him. I will follow him. Wherever he goes, we'll go with him.
Okay, thank you very much, Barrister Oruruo. I'm sure if I allow you, we'll keep on talking. But time is not our friend. Thank you very much for these 2 hours of enlightenment and expose on the thing the government is doing. Well, thank you very much, and we do hope that when we invite you again, you'll find time out of a busy schedule to be here. Thank you very much.